Psalm 94 and verse number 9. He that planted the ear, and that's not the ear of corn, but the ear on man, shall he not hear? He that formed the eye, that would be the eye in man, shall he not see? He that chastiseth the heathen, shall not he correct? He that teacheth man knowledge, shall not he know? The Lord knoweth the thoughts of man, that they are vanity. I want to deal today with the fact that we know God, and I want to deal with the matter of the final cause of things. What is the final cause or the end result of things? As you and I look at God's created world, you and I recognize that there is order in creation. There is order in creation because God is a God of order. The Apostle Paul clearly and distinctly said, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. The fact that God has placed order in the human family and God has established order in creation is a recognition of Himself. Now you and I understand that it is the goal of the adversary, the enemy, the devil, and all of the devil's agents, the unrighteous, the unsaved, and the unholy in society, to do everything they can to cause confusion. The confusion that is brought upon the human family. We find this in the matter of transgenderism. The psychologists called that gender dysphoria, gender confusion. God created them male and female. That is a scientific and a biological and a theological fact. God created man and God created woman. And it is the purpose of God for man and woman to come together in the bond of holy matrimony. Paul refers in Romans 1 to the natural use of the woman and the natural use of the man. That is the final cause or the order that God has created in the human family. The end result of this, or the final cause, is a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave unto his wife. They shall be one flesh, and the product of that will be children, and the human race, the human family, can continue on. The principle of the final cause of man, if you look this up in the dictionary, to be called teleology. The word telos and logos, and it simply is the doctrine of ends, or you could call it the doctrine of a rational purpose. The doctrine of a rational purpose. How do I know that there is a God behind all the created universe? How do I know there is a God behind the creation of the human family? And that would be because God created man to be a rational and intelligent being, and that man would understand the purpose of God that is manifest in the design of man. All that God has created, the function of that created work is completely and entirely rational. The consummation of all that God has created. Certainly, the existence, the heavens declare the glory of God. The creative existence is a declaration of the intelligent purpose of Almighty God, the work of Almighty God. So the design that God has given to everything. Why would God put an ear on the side of a man or a woman's head if God did not intend for them to hear? And yet why would God intend for man to hear if God could not hear when man cries out to God? God has placed two eyes in the front of the head of human beings. Now, God would not put that eye there, except God intended for man to be able to see. And yet the God that created man gave man an eye to enable man to see. As Solomon said in the book of Proverbs, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding both the evil and the good. The God that created the eye, would not I expect that God would also be able to see? If God expects mankind to be able to see, would not you expect that the God that created the eye to also be able to see? What about he that chasteneth? And you and I recognize this matter of chastisement that is in the world. And if God chastens the heathen, then should I not expect God to correct errant mankind, yea, to correct me when I am in error? We see now man doesn't want to be chastened of the Lord. Man doesn't want to be corrected by Almighty God. Man wants to blow the smoke of his rebellion in the face of God and then expect to get by. And yet I read here, he that chasteneth the heathen shall not he correct, and God most certainly will correct. So when I see the creative work of God, I see in man a rational being. I see the handiwork of God in the creation of mankind. When I look around at man and I see the achievements that God has allowed man to achieve, I see the design and the display of man building beautiful edifices. Whenever I go to Monticello, there I see the work of Thomas Jefferson, and I marvel at that. I'm a member at Stratford Hall in Virginia, where Robert E. Lee was born and where the Lees of Virginia lived. I think one of the most beautiful houses and some of the most beautiful architecture I've ever seen in my life is in Stratford Hall. And when I see that, I see the rational ability and the achievement of man. But then I see the work of God in those men, creating something that is uplifting, something that I would actually want to hang a picture of in my home, and hang a picture of Stratford Hall in my office so that I can see it, and I give money to Stratford Hall, and they send their flyers to me, and there I see that beautiful architecture, and it uplifts me, it builds me up. I see other architecture that is downright demonic and depressing, and I would never want a picture of that hanging on the wall of my office or hanging on the wall in my home. There's nothing uplifting about it at all. It is depressing and downtrodden, and I think utterly and entirely demonic. God would not give man the ability to achieve, the ability to design, the ability to build, if God did not want man to build and achieve to his own glory, to the glory of God. And there are a few places I've been in the cornerstone of a great mighty building or a skyscraper built, and I see in the cornerstone, etched in stone for time, it says, to the glory of God. To the glory of God. You see, man originates nothing, but God has allowed man to discover and to utilize what God has created and what God has put here. And there are many men and women that have taken what God has put here, and they paint a beautiful painting, and men walk by and their soul is blessed and their heart is warmed. And men build beautiful buildings, and they brick up those buildings and put those beautiful columns and roofs on them, and we stand and marvel and see how beautiful that is. Why, that magnifies the creative work of Almighty God. A musician sits down and they write a beautiful piece of music, and you and I sit in church or sit in a concert hall and we hear that beautiful piece of music, and it blesses our soul and encourages us and builds us. Somebody will sit down and write a song about Jesus, and the choir sings it, and it blesses our soul. You see, man originates nothing, but God has allowed man to take what God has created and develop that and use that to bring honor and glory unto God. Now, this is one of the reasons our society is being dumbed down. The dumbing down of society is rooted in a denial of God. But the uplifting of society and the building and the educating, not the indoctrinating, the educating of society, that all man's ends are to the glory of God, and that man is to glorify God in all that he says, and that all that he does, and all that he writes, in all that he builds, man is to glorify God. From the vast extent of the telescope down to the micro understanding of the microscope, everything that God has done is entirely and wonderfully perfect. I read this illustration. This is not my illustration at all. I read this illustration. Dr. John Miley gave this illustration. Let me read it to you. The hull of a ship, masts, sails, anchors, rudder, compass, chart, have no necessary connection. And in relation to their physical causities, are heterogeneous phenomena. The future use of a ship is not contained in any one of them, but is possible through their combination. This combination in the fully equipped ship has no interpretation in our rational intelligence except in the previous existence of its use in human thought and purpose. The use of the ship, therefore, is not the mere result of its existence, but the final cause of its construction. That's an interesting illustration. When you and I observe, now I'm not raised near the water. I'm not a shipman. I wasn't raised on the coast or on the mighty river, and that's why I said the illustration is not mine. The illustration is from Dr. John Miley. But you have a hull of a ship, then you have a mast, and you put on that mast a sail, and then you have an anchor to anchor the ship, then you have a rudder to guide the ship, and a compass to know where you're going, and a chart to chart out your course to get from point A to point B. And the hull of the ship and the sails of the ship are not interconnected. The rudder of the ship and the compass of the ship are two entirely different things. The chart of the ship has nothing to do with the mast of the ship. The chart of the ship is on a piece of paper, whereas the mast is a great piece of wood to lift up the sail. All of these things are separate, the one from the other. They are not interconnected until you want to sail. And when you get ready to sail, you need a sail, but you need a mast to run the sail up. And you need a hull to break through the water. But you need a rudder to guide the hull of that ship. And you need a compass so that you will know where you're going on the mighty ocean, on the mighty deep, when you're not able to see land. And all of these things are not connected together. And yet when you put all of them in a ship, they make sailing a possibility. When I look around and I see that God gave me an eye, I then understand that God gave light. But there'd be no purpose for light if I didn't have an eye to receive it. And when I see that God gave to me an ear, I can hear the sound. But there'd be no purpose for the sound if I didn't have an ear to receive it. Truly, there is a God, Jehovah God, and His Son, Jesus Christ. And God is the creator of the universe because of the order of the end of things as God has created them.